USC just upset a top 10 team in the country, and it wasn't by accident. Their half-court offense looks completely different from last year. Better spacing, faster decisions, and a much smarter use of their personnel. So let's get into the film and break down exactly why it worked. Let's start with this play that Lindsay calls from the sideline. Malia is initiating at the top when London cutting through, and this little pitchback she does is subtle but very important for the success of this play. Not only does it force the defense to communicate with the two guards up top, but also occupies the eyes of the help defenders. Focus on number 2 for NC State. She's staring right at the ball when the pitchback is happening. A half second later, Jazzy blindsides her with a backscreen to free up Cara Dunn for a layup. So a good design early that leads to an easy bucket. Now they're getting the ball up quickly to Jazzy in early transition, and they're just running a simple spread pick and roll here. NC State player goes under and tries to beat Jazzy to the spot on the other side, but she does a good job to read it, rejects the screen, gets to her left hand, uses a high pickup to avoid that gap help defender, and gets a shot in the paint that doesn't go down. And I want to focus on the spacing here. Both corners are filled, and you have another shooter above the break at the three-point line, and that's a stark contrast from last year. There were too many times where Juju would try to get downhill, but the spacing wasn't ideal. Kiki and Ray would often be inside the arc, clogging up driving lanes, leaving nowhere for Juju to go. So this is a major change for Lindsay in regards to her spacing principles. You can see here the paint isn't clogged. Jazzy's able to drive, just barely misses, and honestly, I think there's a foul here. But process over results. Early second quarter here, and USC gets into a horn set. 2 players on the elbows and shooters in each corner. Malia passes the ball to Jazzy in a high post, and what makes this play so dangerous is you have your best player getting the ball in such an advantageous position based solely on alignment. Gerda's going to set this inside ball screen so Jazzy can get to her left hand, and as soon as the defender goes under, Jazzy sees it and has a wide open mid-range jumper from 15 feet. Another missed shot, but getting your best player clean and open looks is a sign you're doing something right. They will eventually fall. The key on offense is to make the defense shift and to force help. This is exactly what USC does on this next possession. They flow into Iverson action with London running across 2 screens at the top. Nothing too complicated, but it forces NC State to shift and adjust. When she catches on the wing, she immediately rejects the ball screen going towards the baseline. However, number 3 does a good job to cut off the drive, but the possession isn't over. Kaya Milton makes a simple cut towards the paint, which draws the attention of the player guarding Jazzy at the top. Now Jazzy is able to lift all the way across from the weak side, giving London an option to kick out. As the defense recovers, she has enough space to take the 3 with confidence and knocks it down. The first action may not create the shot, but once you get the defense moving, they're at your mercy. Here USC turns to a really smart use of personnel. Jazzy gives it up early and immediately transitions into a screener, pairing with Milton in a double drag look for London. And the reason this works so well is that it forces NC State to navigate 2 different angles in a short amount of time. The defender gets caught up on the second screen, and London ends up with a really clean mid-range look. It doesn't drop, but the process is exactly what you want. You're using your best player as a screener to create confusion, and you're letting another left-handed ball handler attack with momentum towards their dominant hand. That's hard to guard, and it's something USC leaned on multiple times in this game. Early in the shot clock here with Jazzy on the left wing, and they get into an empty side ball screen. Again, if the defense is going to overplay her left hand, it's no problem for her to reject the screen and to attack the other way. The paint is open for a floater that just misses because the corner is occupied and the big is lifted. The help defenders have way too much ground to cover. The next play is one of my favorites because it combines multiple actions into one clean sequence. Jazzy starts off by setting a back screen which forces her defender to turn her head, and the moment that happens, she pops out to receive a ball screen. NC State is making an effort to force her to her weak hand, but Jazzy takes what the defense gives her and gets all the way to the cup on a middle drive. The floor is perfectly spaced, which causes number 2 for NC State to hesitate as a low man defender. She has to respect Dunn in the corner as a capable shooter. Great action that leads to an easy lay at the rim. Not much action here on this play. However, the spacing is elite with everybody positioned outside the 3-point line. Dunn sets a quick step-up screen for Jazzy going left. NC State switches, and then Jazzy goes to work. Nasty spin into a left-right crossover, shakes her defender, stays on balance by finishing off 2 feet at the rim. She doesn't need much to get her game off. 2-point game late in the third quarter, and USC runs a high ball screen for London. NC State decides to hard hedge it this time instead of playing their usual drop coverage, but it creates a sizable gap between the 2 NC State defenders, which London exploits. Again, the corners are filled with Jazzy space above the break, and it opens up a runway for London to get all the way to the rim. Much needed bucket for USC to tie it up heading into the fourth quarter. This play stands out because it's a wrinkle to a play they ran earlier in the game. They use that same pitchback action from the first play. This time Jazzy pitches it back to Malia, and the defense starts to anticipate a similar flow. Pay attention to the eyes of number 0. She's already assuming that Jazzy is going to cut all the way across, but that's not what happens. Instead of cutting all the way through, Jazzy fakes the cut and then comes off a screen going back the opposite way. She's wide open for a top of the key 3, sets her feet, drills it. Perfect example of building off a concept you used earlier with a little twist to catch the defense off guard. Late in the game here, and USC needs a bucket down 7 with less than 5 minutes to go. You can see Jazzy directing traffic at the beginning of the play to get everybody in their right spots. Then she calls up Kennedy to set what turns out to be a go screen. Kennedy fakes like she's going to set the ball screen, then slips out immediately to the right side of the floor. NC State is confused for a brief second, which is all Kennedy needs to attack off the catch. With her defender off balance, she's able to create separation with the spin move into a fadeaway and knocks down a clutch shot to cut the lead to 5. Having your 2 best players involved in the action when the game is close is always a good thing. Beautiful game winner drawn up and executed by USC. They set it up like they're going to bring Jazzy to the top for a catch. Number 35 on NC State top blocks is trying to deny the pass, but because Gerda, who's playing the 5 in this lineup, is spaced all the way above the 3-point line, the entire lane is wide open. Jazzy reads it perfectly. The moment she feels that denial, she back cuts hard to the rim. Catch, finish, ball game. That's a really big win for the Lady Trojans. Credit to Coach Lindsay Gottlieb for adjusting her scheme from last season and moving towards a more modern spacing philosophy. She put her best players in positions where they could succeed, and it paid off with an upset win over a top 10 opponent.